Welcome to Fresh Tech Tips. I am Derrell Noris, CEO of Fresh Tech Solutionz, and I have a couple of my business partners here with me today.
Hello, guys. I'm Nicholas Mbaezue-Daniel, founder of Eases Project Management.
And hey, everyone, I'm Dr. Doug Franklin, CEO and co-founder of DAC Launch LLC. How you guys doing today?
Today's a beautiful day, Doug. It's a beautiful Monday.
It is.
So today's Fresh Tech Tip topic is help wanted. Let's talk about hiring. So this is an interesting topic. Dr. Doug is an expert, and I know he's gonna love this topic. And I kind of want to hit a couple of points. One, I want to talk about when is the right time to hire. Then I want to talk about who you're hiring. And then I want to talk about how do you hire. So, Nick, I don't know if we have a definition for hiring because it's kind of self-explanatory. But hit us with something. Hit us with something lovely, Nick.
So I mean, this is going to lead us into our first point, but I just want to talk a little bit about some of the importance of hiring, specifically because for you to hire is you're expending some resources, and we know resources are very important to your business. So your timing is going to be key in your hiring because some of the numbers that we found there, it costs about over $4,000 just for you to go through the process of hiring somebody, and it's going to cost you anywhere from 40 to 52 days to fill that position. So time is money. Obviously, money is money. So you don't want to waste that with hiring. You want to make sure that before you hire, you hit some of our key points today. Keep that in mind so that you get the most out of it.
Yeah, so let's start. Let's go this thing, man. Let's talk about when is the right time to hire. What do you think, Doc?
So we normally go with there's a sweet spot number we were given by our mentor, Mark Davenport, for full-time hires that says, hey, when you're at $250,000 of revenue, that's the time where you should be able to get that next full-time hire to get you to the next level. But we'll also talk about some of the other types of hiring that you can do when your business actually has a need. So there's two different other pieces of this where it's time to hire. When you don't necessarily have the right skills or knowledge to be able to get something done at the job, or B, when you just are at capacity. So if Derrell can't make any more apps, as much as he loves apps, now it's time to hire somebody. and we're going to talk about some of the different ways that you can hire people. So I guess we could shift over to who you're hiring.
Yeah, before we do that shift, I want to touch on that a little bit more. When you're at capacity, as an entrepreneur, first of all, you always feel like you're at capacity. I'm always at capacity.
Yep.
But you have to realize what that point is, what that breaking point is, what that hiring point is. And for us, it came to the point where we have meetings booked 2 weeks out, and we have work to do, but we have to be on meetings all the time. Okay, something needs to change, like right now. So when you're at capacity, that's when the time. And if you're at capacity, you should be okay financially. So it kind of fits together. And that lack of knowledge, that's very important. So when you have a skill set, or if you have a client who's requesting something that you can't do, and being a tech company, everybody thinks that I can do everything. And that's great. Yes, keep thinking that. Yes, I can do everything. Yes. If I can't do it, that's what this episode is for. Because if I can't do it, I'm going to find somebody who can. Because that's what we're talking about. That's what we do. So, Doc, you're absolutely right. Let's go back into that who. So we talked about when is the right time to hire. Nick, how do you know who to hire?
How do we know who to hire? Well, first of all, let's talk about what type of people that they are, what kind of options do we have before you choose. So you have your full-time hires, you have your part-time hires, interns, and then contract, which listening to Derrell and what he was talking about, kind of sounded like going for resources outside your company, maybe for short term or for targeted projects, just to help you, so that way you can fill in your needs. So, and they all have their pros and cons. So we're going to go into it. We can start with full-time. Full-time hires are probably more into that sweet spot, like you mentioned, with 250K in revenue. Okay, now I need to start to remove myself from the business a little bit, from like the day-to-day grind of the business, so I can focus on working on the business and growing it. In your stead, you need somebody there who's committed, who's taking care of, who you can trust will be there full time. And so that's where they come in. You usually pay them with salaries, benefits, and there's a lot of costs that come into a full-time person. But in return, you get someone that you can count on, someone you trust, someone that you can control within the company. And then part-time, I mean, I know y'all are pretty used to part-time. What do you think about part-time, Doug?
So part-time is a really helpful, another helpful structure when you may not necessarily have a whole lot of cash flow. Because for the most part, when you think about part-time workers, you're structuring them in a specific part of the day where where they have a specific set of focuses for either, like maybe short 4-hour shifts, or only 2 to 3 times a week. And so it's really beneficial to have them because you could basically schedule them flexibly based on what you need, and then they're cheaper because basically when you look at full-time employees, there's so many other financial needs like we talked about, just benefits or insurance, and that's not necessarily something you have to do with part-time. But the reality is especially based on the rules and regulations that you have in your state, you have to be very careful with how much you work your part-time workers. So like when your part-time employee is supposed to be capped at between 28 and 30 hours, and your state says at 31 hours, for one pay period, if this person works 31 hours, now you got a full-time employee, you have to be aware of those things. So your needs cannot be above the amount of people, or the amount of their needs can't be above the maximum time that this part-time worker can work.
No, definitely. And I think it's very important to understand before you hire what your needs are, because a lot of people make the mistake of, and since we're talking about the different types of people you can hire, a lot of people do hire independent contractors and treat them like employees, like full-time employees, and you can get in a lot of trouble for that. You can't be telling independent contractors you have to be in the office from 9 to 5. So know the difference between hiring those independent contractors and hiring those W-2 employees.
Right, and then with the other two types of employees, I'll just tell you, introduce them, and then we'll continue to talk about them. Interns, and then Derrell already mentioned contract. And for interns, they're lower cost, but their capacity is usually lower than the people who are looking for experience. Maybe they're college students, high school students, or maybe just people who have been out of the workforce, transitioning into a new career, a new field. So usually for interns, you can't really rely on them a lot, other than these are people who can give you time, and they'll give you their motivation. They're determined to work. But other than that, there's not much else they can give you right off the bat. So you have to train them, but they're low cost, I said, and they're more eager. Contract work, that varies. So for a lot of businesses, contract work could be your best bet, because if you build it in a way where your processes are strong enough, you can just plug and play. Fixing contractors, they're already legitimate business people most of the time. They're professionals. They're used to working. They have expertise. They have skills. They can meet your demand. It's just that the price point might vary, and also depending on who it is, they don't really have an allegiance to you. I mean, they have to go where the money is. So if you haven't worked with a contractor for like a few months, there's no guarantee that when you need him that next week that he's going to be there. So you probably have to rotate them and have multiple. So that's just something to think about with all of these.
that's a great point and a great transition to our next point, which is finding the right candidate. So it's so important to find the right person. Like we talked about earlier, finding the wrong person can be very costly, very, very costly. We've dealt with a lot of wrong candidates. We dealt with some right candidates, but it's always a cost when you pick the wrong person. So it's very, very important to have this process down and understand your need before you start this process, your specific need. So get down to those specifics and understand what you're really looking for. Because if you don't, and you end up hiring the wrong person, I'm telling you from experience, it's going to be costly.
And people try to be cheap. That's something I found in the past is that, you have all this work and you just be like, all right, just get somebody in and we'll just try to make them do the work and try to fit in, square pegs into round holes or specs into chasms. That you can't do that. You know what the work is. Don't be cheap. Just understand that money that you're saving on the front end by trying to squeeze somebody in who may not be a perfect fit, you're going to pay for it doubly in time, maybe reputation, some things that you might not be able to get back, lawsuits. so usually these issues that you get on the back end, they usually start on the front end by you not preparing properly, not making the right decision.
Yeah, and before Doug hops in, because I know he's itching. But I love that you said about that fit. Do they fit? Because Fresh Tech Solutions, we are a different kind of company. You cannot be a regular person working for Fresh Tech. It's a specific culture and feel and how we work together, and that's more important than all of your skill qualities and your degrees put together. Like, you have to be able to deal with me. You have to be able to deal with Doug and take advice from Nick. Like, you have to. With us, it's a different story, man. Because you have to be right. Because if you're not right on the culture, then nothing else matters with Fresh Tech.
And every business is like that.
Yeah, so this is kind of cool. So we'll be able, this last section where we're talking about finding the right candidate is really near and dear, because not only are we doing it, but this is part of some of the stuff that I've researched. And so Derrell hit it right on the head. The thing that you have to do, the first thing you have to do, the same way that you would do anything, like on the business side, right? We always ask you to look for your target market or and understand who your target consumer is. Well, what does your target employee look like? Of course, not physically, but I mean, there's knowledge, there's skills, there's effort, there is some type of personality that you may be looking for. You may be looking for someone who's a little bit more outgoing and gregarious. You may be looking for somebody who's a little bit more professional. Of course, you're looking for people with ethics, but those are the things that you're starting to look at all together, because just like Nick said, and then Derrell doubled, is that it's okay if you think that you could get somebody who's a great worker and can produce, but isn't going to get along with people. That could blow up your business before it even starts. So those are some of the things that you have to think of. But of course, as these are businesses, and it is the bottom line, the thing you have to sit there and think about at the very least is, with what this guy's paying, am I breaking even, number one, and then am I double or tripling the worth of their salary? Because if you're bringing in a full-time employee and they're not doubling their worth, then they're probably sucking some type of time and effort from a whole different area. And so that kind of shows you maybe you should have went with a whole different structure. And that's why we asked you to consider those checks and balances for the sections above before going forward with your decisions. And most importantly, when you're talking about finding the right candidate, is do they play well in the sandbox with everybody? So you can be as professional as you want with the consumer, but if you have to work with 4 or 5 other people in the office and you can't get along, it's not going to work out really well. So those are the things you have to look for when you hire. And so then the big question is how do you get there then? So where do we go from here, Derrell?
So how do we hire? How do we hire? That's a question that many business owners don't know the answer to, especially for me. When I coming from corporate America, hopped into a business and I'm ready to hire, and it's like, oh, I need paperwork, documents, what I need. So so it was kind of a just something else to learn in the entrepreneur world. But let's talk about those methods. Let's talk about the STAR method. Let's talk about interviewing.
Okay. So there's a couple of pieces of the smell test for me that go in right before the interview. And so generally speaking, we always get someone's resume, which attracts us, or look at their portfolio, which also attracts us into the interview process. The most important thing is you have to find ways to show what really comes off of this resume that actually says they did something meaningful, and then you have to show, or you have to find out that this person has the thought processes and capabilities to be able to do the things that they say they could do on their resume. And I literally say that because I had an employee at one of my jobs in retail that gave us a resume that said he was an assistant manager and apparently did not know how to sweep, mop, so on and so forth, and he was fired immediately. So I don't know whose resume it was, but people have resumes that don't necessarily equate with what they do. And so this is why you use the STAR method for interview questions. So for the most part, people are fairly aware of the STAR method if they do any type of preparation for interviews. If you look up how to answer interview questions, the STAR method comes out more than just about anything right now at this moment, and that's situation, task, assessment, and then resolution. So STARS: situation, task, assessment, resolution. So now you're asking someone to give you a situation based on the question you ask. So it could be the hardest thing you've ever had to do at work. Talk about a time where you worked well with the team or had difficulty working with the team. You resolved a difficult problem. There's a bunch of questions like that. So they should be able to address the situation for you. Then the task. Then they should tell you what they had to do. Assessment tells you a little bit about how they analyzed the situation. Resolution tells you how what came out of the situation. Was it good, bad, ugly, somewhere in the middle? And so the best thing about asking questions in the STAR method, where they have things broken down into little boxes, is it allows you to be able to also ask smaller questions of why in the middle of those questions. So if someone's telling you all these processes, how they work with people, and there's something that caught your attention, you can always ask them, so why did you do this, rather than an alternative. And so when you ask these questions, you may not get through all of the research, the interview questions you wanted to, but you're going to get richer information because you're making the potential employee think, and that's really what you want to get at. It's cool if they can spit out what's on the resume, but it's even better when you can see clearly how they work.
And you hear that's awesome, Doug. And you kind of made me want to go back a little bit, one step prior to that, as far as how do we identify these people that we're interviewing. And so for me, Nick always says one of my greatest gifts is identifying people. So for me, I have people in line right now who I want to hire. I know exactly who these people are. I know what positions they're going to be. I've already told them, and they gave me their number. So when I'm ready to provide that number, I know exactly who I'm bringing on. So luckily, and this is probably not going to happen for everybody, but you have to have at least that avatar of who you're talking about, because I know specifically. I know who's my my graphic designer is going to be. I talked to him yesterday about it. So he's waiting on me. So I have identified that person already. So I know 100% sure that this whole process of finding anybody and interviewing, I won't have to go through, because I've already identified. I've been interviewing for a year. So that's kind of I just want to throw that out there as far as identifying people. But you should have somebody specific that you're looking for.
Yeah, even if it's not a person, like Derrell says, it comes from self-awareness. So what Derrell is talking about here is that he knows what he wants and what he doesn't want, and then you find somebody to fit into that. So everything comes back to that culture. Everything has to be from within you, like in your room or with your team. If you have a team or by yourself, you map out what it is that needs to be done for this role, and then who it is, and then you go out and find people who best fit that, and then thinking about it, because it takes a long time to build culture, to build teamwork, camaraderie, morale, and it only takes just one person to destroy all of it. So that's why you have to be really meticulous, and that's why there's so much importance in it, because it really affects productivity, and it's hard to balance. It's very nuanced.
Yeah, and one of the other things that we have started to like to do as we've been interviewing some people for some opportunities here, we like, as you know, our pitch decks are kind of like the mini version of a business plan. Sometimes we like to do like very, very small cases. So like in a lot of case-based interviews, there could be a gauntlet where you're basically asking someone to break down a major thought that you may pass to them on a piece of paper or running through a case with a bunch of different managers all at the same time, with a panel of people, with a panel of other potential hirees. So we're not necessarily a super-sized consulting company, so we don't really have to do that. But one of the things that can be really helpful sometimes when you see people's work or people tell you what their work is just giving them a hypothetical example and just trying to see how they work through it. That is one of the things we really like to do with our strategy guys. We tend to ask them a question about a hypothetical business that is interested in building an app, and then we say, well, where would you position these guys? And if you had an unlimited marketing budget, what crazy thing would you do? Because one of the things that you also want to be able to tie yourself to, if you can help it, is trying to figure out some of those creative things that are difficult for us to really pick up. In pre-production, we're laughing because for some reason or another, there's always these questions, these random questions that people ask you to see how you think. So what was your question, Derrell?
I think I was getting interviewed. I think I was getting interviewed on a Zoom call with like 6 Googlers for a Google position. I think it was a software engineering position. They asked me how many golf balls fit into the Empire State Building. So, I mean, yes, I get it. I understand. They want to know how we think. They want to understand my logic. Okay, yes, make assumptions, the Empire State Building this tall and the golf ball is this tall, is this many floors, blah, blah, blah. Yes, I can give you something, but how is that helping Google? Like that the question didn't really, it wasn't a use case. So when we're doing stuff, we're talking about apps. We're trying to figure out how you think in a certain app situation or a certain pitch deck situation. So get specific about your questions and don't just ask people questions just to try to make them, I don't know, think hard or feel bad or feel dumb or whatever it is. Have point to all your interview questions. And y'all know I have a bad taste about that.
Right. Yeah. So the other things that people look at though is, portfolio work. Obviously, it goes into this, or we're talking about evidence. Just pretty much trying to find ways to validate the hire. Personality tests. I mean, Doug's not a big fan of personality tests. I think that goes into what Derrell was saying with those kind of questions.
No, it's not that he's a big fan. Personality is very important, but I feel like that some people like Dr. Doug and myself, we can judge personalities without a test. So But
yeah. So yeah, a lot of the and so this is probably another full sermon that I could do at any other time, and not necessarily we want to pick up here, but a lot of the most popular, hot, sexy tests that are out there for personality are not necessarily measuring what they say they measure, because they're really not grounded in a lot of the science and things of that nature. And the cool thing is there's been tests that have been around for a lot longer that are a lot shorter, like the Big Five personality, goal orientation, things of that nature. There's leadership assessments and stuff like that that have been in industrial and organizational psychology and organizational behavior that take less time and have already been lined up to performance and working well in groups and things of that nature. So it's like, it's cool if you know you're an INTJ, A, B, C, D, E, but has this been something that's been aligned to the solutions? And that's kind of where that's what the most important thing is for me. And I think that's kind of the funny thing is, like, I'll try to research everything until, like, when we hire, I always like to see if your resume matches what you say in the interview, matches something, if we give you like a practical question, and then matches how we perceive your personality. So, like, if you come in and you say you're bubbly, but then you have the personality of Ben Stein or Eeyore, then there's a difference or something that we can tell is going on.
And we're definitely checking that Facebook page. And don't let me find your Snapchat, because I know that's where the real stuff goes on. So yeah. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. It's been a wonderful episode. I love chopping it up with you fellas. We will be back next Monday and every Monday at 12 o'clock noon on Facebook Live. Please join the Fresh Tech Tips Facebook group. That's Tips with the Z, of course. Everything's with the Z over here. And I just want to reiterate that you have to know when to hire. You have to hire the right people. So if you're thinking about hiring, if you need help, don't be afraid to hire. Because I was afraid to hire as an entrepreneur. Don't be afraid. It's okay. And reach out if you need some help. We're here. Thanks for joining Fresh Tech Tips. We'll see y'all guys soon.